Hi everyone, welcome back to SmugMug Live. Thank you so much for joining us today. Wherever you are in the world, you are more than welcome, and it's so good to have you here on episode 57 of SmugMug Live, and we will be joined in a few moments by the wonderful Daniel Sundahl. As always, SmugMug Live is brought to you by SmugMug and Flickr, and if you're looking for somewhere to showcase your images, show your images to the world, share them, store them in the cloud, and let your customers buy your images, or have an e-commerce solution. There's so many things you can do with a SmugMug account. So check out everything we have to offer at smugmug.com. If you're looking to be part of an incredible photo community, then check out everything we have to offer at flickr.com. Yes, thank you for being here for this episode. As always, we would love it if you would subscribe to this channel. Hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell notification. That way you will be notified whenever we release another episode of SmugMug Live. And as always, it's really, really nice to see where you're all joining us from today. So get in that chat, give yourself a shout out, let us know what part of the world you're joining today. And if at any point you have a question for our guest today, then post that in the chat window and I will try and get as many of those questions to Daniel as possible. You can do me a huge favor by starting your question with the word question dash and then post your question. Makes it much easier for me to find it in the chat window while we're having this conversation. A conversation I'm really looking forward to having today. Today's guest, Daniel Sundahl, was a customer of ours who I was introduced to earlier this year, and I was just amazed by the work that Daniel was creating. So I thought, let's get him on the show, have a little chat about his very unique work, the reasons of why he does it and how he does it. So without further ado, I would like to say hello to Daniel Sundahl. Hi, Daniel. How are you?
Good, Alistair. How are you? Thanks for having me on your show.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, cool. So for those people that aren't sure where you are, what part of the world are you joining me from today?
I'm in Western Canada. I'm in Alberta, in Edmonton.
Up
right in
there
the middle of winter. Actually, it's pretty good here now. Actually weather's pretty nice
up there
for
in
our winter. Yeah. Yeah, we have there's a lot of good photographers up in Alberta.
There is.
We have good stock here.
You do, and I know many of them. We have some colleagues up there as well, which is great. So, and it's funny, a lot of you who have watched this show before will know, despite headquarters being in San Francisco, I'm currently based here in Scotland at home because I can't go anywhere else at the moment. But what's really interesting, where I am in Scotland, we're at exactly the same latitude as each other. Latitude,
longitude. Really?
Yeah. As Alberta. People
great.
don't realise Scotland's so far up there, but we don't have the extremes of
Did you guys
weather
have
that you do.
Yeah, do you have lots of snow there right now?
We don't have any snow. Yeah, just up on the mountains. We have the wonderful North Atlantic drift, that hot current that comes up from the Gulf of Mexico.
Oh, nice.
Just means it rains all the time. I wish it would snow.
Yeah, I've never been to Scotland. I'd love to go. I've been invited there, and I really want to make my way over there and do some photography there.
It's a beautiful part of the world. I highly recommend it. Let's have a little look at the chat window there. As I say, give yourselves a shout out in the chat window. Let us know where you're joining us from. We've got Felipe who says, hey, doesn't tell us where you're from, but thank you for joining, Philippe. We've got Ramez is joining us from Amman in Jordan. Thank you for joining us. Claudio says hello from Tenerife. That's a beautiful part of the world. I love Tenerife.
Oh, nice.
Nice volcanic island there in the warm waters. We've got Rob joining us from Ontario, Canada.
Nice.
And Hamid is joining us from Iran. So far quite lots of others in there. So lots of people spread all over the world at the moment, which is kind of cool.
Nice international feel.
Yeah. Rosemary joins us from South Carolina. So yeah, you're all welcome today, and hopefully you will be really interested in what we're going to talk about and have a look at Daniel's work. I'm going to start by saying, forgive me, Daniel, but today's episode comes with a little bit of a trigger warning, right?
Yeah,
You knew I was going to say that.
absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm going to let you explain why today's episode will have a bit of a trigger warning, and maybe we should just give people a heads up before we start looking at some of your imagery.
Yeah. So for those of you that aren't familiar with my photography, it does come with some disclaimers. A lot of the images, I'm a paramedic firefighter, so a lot of the images are based on emergency services. Now, none of them are actual photos of calls I've been on, so I don't bring my camera with me when I'm working, and I don't take pictures of actual scenes. But they are based on events that I've attended as a paramedic or firefighter. So what I do is I stage the scene, meaning that I set them up with my coworkers, I photograph it, and then I digitally draw and paint on top of the photograph. But the reason I do the artwork, or the reason I take these photos, is because it's part of my therapy. It's part of my process to purge kind of the bad stuff that has happened to me and has affected my mind. And this is kind of my therapy. This photography is my therapy. So when I create the images, I'm not thinking, is this going to offend somebody? Are people going to like it? Are people going to want to buy it? I don't think of that when I create it. The purpose of them is to purge those things from my mind. So you're going to see some graphic images, but just know that they're not real. They're based on real things, but any trauma that's in my artwork is I added that in. I post-process that stuff in there. Now I use angels and demons to represent trauma and recovery, or trauma and treatment. So some people get offended by using that that symbolism, but I don't apologize for my artwork. I don't create it for other people. The photography is my own, and it's part of my own process. And in order for it to be good for me and a healing process for me, I need to be authentic in how I create it. So you're going to see some images today that, and based on your background, based on your experiences, it might trigger some of you. So you've been warned. How about that?
Yeah, I'm not trying to make it too sensationalized, but I think it's just fair to let people know that we've all dealt with trauma, we've all dealt with grief, we've dealt with a lot of emotional situations, and some of a lot of that is reflected in your work. So just we're just letting you know that some of the images we look at, albeit artwork, have a lot of emotion in them, a lot of your emotions. And you mentioned there that this is artwork, so we're not here making any kind of statements pro or for or against these situations. These are just your way of dealing with the situations that you see, and it's really intriguing to me as someone who is not involved in the emergency services in any shape or form within my family. It's people like yourself that really wake up the wider community to the impact that these kind of things have mentally and physically on the people on the front lines.
Yeah, and I think for when I create the artwork, although it's very personal to me and it's a personal process for me, how to kind of get these things out of my head. Those in my community, my fellow emergency workers, when they see that and they see the comments that people make on them, the big thing is that it fosters a sense of community. It makes us feel that we're not alone. There's a lot of shame and a lot of stigma and a lot of negativity toward PTSD and mental trauma in all communities, I think. So I think a good thing with my artwork is that it does it shows other people that if this guy in Canada is making artwork that kind of depicts what is going on in their head, then it may make them feel that they're not alone in what they're feeling, and they're not. It's very common. A lot of us suffer from mental trauma based on our experiences.
Absolutely, and something like mental health issues, depression, trauma, it can be very siloing. Like it's something that can make you close off and become very inward absorbed kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So although you say you create this for yourself, it's quite clear from the community that I've seen engaging with your work, even those I see people posting in the chat right now who are quite clearly from your community, and it's become a channel for them to discuss and engage. And I guess starting the conversation is always the hardest bit. And what better way than to just start the conversation around some incredible pieces of art?
Yeah, I'm super lucky. And I never thought this was going to happen. I didn't think other people would like my images, because some of them are pretty dark and pretty scary, and certainly not what other emergency workers would want to see how we were portrayed in a vulnerable state. So I'm really surprised when I first started sharing this artwork that was so welcomed by the community. And one thing I didn't really understand, or didn't realize at the time, I understand now, but people look at the artwork and it's more of a catalyst for them to process their own experiences. So they'll look at the image that I did based on a call that I've done, and then they'll associate their own experiences with that image. So it's actually less about the photography and more about their own experiences, which is great. Like it's wonderful, and it tells me that I'm not alone in how I'm feeling. So I'm super lucky. I'm really glad that it's given me a lot of opportunity, and it really has changed me. I also play guitar, but I'm not very good at it, and so no one really cares about my guitar playing. But that's also therapy for me. So it's nice that so many others really connected with the artwork that I was trying to express.
Yeah. I'm a bedroom guitar hero as well. I'm a great. Do you know something I've discovered, Daniel? Is a ton of photographers I know all play guitar. It's like we have this creative outlet that wants to be artwork and creative photography, but also we all wanted to be rock stars for some reason as well. I don't know.
Oh, if I had a dream, if I said, okay, what would your one dream be? It would either be a rock star or be an astronaut. When I was a kid, when I was 5 years old, my mom asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said I wanted to be a fire truck. So, which makes no sense, but I am driving a fire truck now.
Yeah.
That'd be a horrible life to be a fire truck, but
to be the fire truck. Yeah. A lot of us wanted to be a lot of us wanted to be firefighters when we were kids, but not the actual appliance.
No, I know, right? I wanted to be the fire truck, which is really weird. That and a rock star or an astronaut. So
that's cool. So
yeah, I guess
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say for photographers, we are artists, right? So I think, if you have that artist gene, then how you express it either through music, guitars, or painting, or whatever, it's there.
Yeah. So how long have you been within the emergency services as an EMT or whatever path you took?
Well, my first course I took, I think I was working as a dive master in the Cayman Islands, and part of our training was rescue diving. So that was when I did my first medical training, and that was in the late 80s. And then I became an EMR, which is the first level at that time in the early 90s. Became an EMT in 1996 and an advanced care paramedic in 2003. And then in between there, I worked as an English teacher and kind of traveled as an English teacher.
Man, this could be a whole different episode. Diving, English teaching. There's a lot to unfold here.
Oh yeah, it's a lot. When I was younger, I told I really wanted to live a full life. That was kind of what I wanted, and that's kind of part of the reason I wanted to become a paramedic and a firefighter, is to really live, as full as I can, and really live at the pointy end of the spear, so to speak. But I never said no to any opportunities, and yeah, that's gotten me into a lot of trouble actually, but great experiences.
No regrets.
No regrets. No.
Yeah. It's there's some questions coming in already. Thank you to those who are posting questions. I'm not ignoring them. We'll probably get to them a little bit later once we've had a little bit of a look at Daniel's work. But a few more shout outs. Susie says, Susie from Nottingham. She says, hi, Dan.
Oh, hi, Susie.
Christoph says, hello, Daniels. Greeting from Poland. I follow your work, and it was nice to see photos from my country. We'll get into
I had a great time in Poland. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get into some of your travel. Iris says hello from Lima in Peru.
Oh, nice. Hi, Iris.
Richard Wilson says love his work and have multiple signed. It makes it so real for me.
Oh, thanks, Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. And then some questions there, which I will get to later in the show, but keep them coming. And Northern Medic one says hello from Winnipeg. Someone
Oh, great.
a bit closer to home there. Thank you all for joining us. Now, let's, we're here to talk about your photography. When did you start taking photographs? Is that something new, or is that something you've always done? How did that all start for you as a photographer?
I really like the idea of a photography because it's the technical part, and I think I'm a geek like many of us are photographers because we like the equipment part and the computers and the post processing, but it also has that artistic side of manipulating the photo. So I unapologetically post process the crap out of my photos. And I like that because that's the artistic side where I can add my own thing, but there's still the technical part. So I really enjoyed that. I think my first camera was a Canon T1i, I think. And I really, that's one of the first camera I had where I could actually start changing lenses and stuff. And I loved it. And I was doing some macro photography, I was like freezing bugs and putting them in my freezer and taking pictures of them and doing pictures of my dog and landscapes. And so I was kind of getting into that at the time. And then through my therapy, through my psychologist, we kind of thought, well, maybe you can use that hobby to kind of focus and kind of work through the things that were going on in your mind. And that's when I started to use my style of photography to process the images I had by recreating them. So that was back, and I think my first image was 2013. So 2013, about 7 years, I've been using the photography as therapy and creating this artwork for emergency services.
That's excellent. And let's have a look at that first image here. And there's, as I say, there's a lot to unpack in these images because I want to talk about the process. But before we do that, you can explain what you were trying to do with this first image that we have here today.
Yeah. So this is the very first picture that I did, and you can see there's his spirit is flipped upside down. So the spirit of the patient is kind of floating away, and he's reaching down. And this is a very accurate picture to the call that I went on. And so here are the paramedics doing CPR on this, well, he wasn't a kid. I always refer to him as a kid, but he was a man in his 20s who was hit by a drunk driver. And he ended up dying in the back of our ambulance. So there's this picture. And then also, if you go to the next picture, it's kind of a two-parter. Then this is the second part. So when I made this picture, I didn't intend on sharing it with anybody. Here's a paramedic with his gloved hands on his heads, which is absolutely disgusting. Like we don't do that. And then the spirit of the patient is staring at the paramedic, kind of saying, "Hey, you failed." Well, the story is, the reason I did this was because of the way that he passed really kind of affected me. He was calling for his mom. So this picture shows him saying that we failed his mother, not so much him. And that really kind of stuck with me for a long time. So I did this picture, and it's very accurate. So where the trauma was, again, that's all photoshopped. It's all added after, where we had the IV bags, where we had the monitors, where we had the IVs, where we had, the garbage. That's all the way that it actually was. But when I did this picture, it took about a week or a couple weeks to do those two images. I was thinking about that call, and I tried to recreate more what I felt versus what I saw. And that's why in a lot of my images, I have, spirits and, grim reapers and angels and demons and stuff. But when I was done, I captured that kind of before this image. I described it as a organic monster that invades my consciousness uninvited, is how these memories are, these emotions, these feelings are. And then when I do the artwork, because it's so emotional, then I trap it into this 1 or 2 dimensional picture, right? So when I did this picture, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to share this with anybody. The other paramedics and firefighters and any emergency responders that look at this, it shows a paramedic firefighter that's upset, right? And we're not supposed to show any type of feelings or emotion or vulnerability. And 2, he's got gloved hands on his head, which is disgusting.
Yeah, it's kind of against protocol type thing, right?
Yeah, so, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm not going to share this with anybody. But it was so helpful for me. But over time, I looked at it. I'm like, yeah, it's a cool looking picture. It kind of looks like a cartoon. I'm going to share it and just see what happens. I didn't do any narrative. I didn't do any write up for it. Totally expecting to get tons of negative feedback. And then the opposite happened. Like it just went viral, like millions of views on this picture. And so many people commented on it and so many people connected to it. And that made me feel really good, because then that made me feel like, you know, maybe I'm not weird. Maybe there's not this. I'm not the only one. I'm not crazy. This is happening to a lot of us. So quite the opposite happened. But yeah, those are the very first images that I did.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, this is
2014.
as a predominantly, you know, photography brand and show. I want to break down the photograph a little bit. I don't want to, you know, ignore the emotional side of what you're trying to do here, but I would like to look at some of the technical side of what you're doing here.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's good. I'm happy to talk about the photography part.
Yeah, because you said at the top of the show, you know, this is all artwork. This is all recreated. This isn't taken.
Yeah.
You know, none of the trauma is live. You know, this is a reenactment of a real scenario, but also you know, the emotions and the story that you're trying to tell and the story that you're trying to get across. But from a photographic point of view, with these first two images, you know, for all intents and purposes, it looks like you're standing at the doorway of an ambulance photographing, you know, someone dying on a gurney there. So how do you go about reenacting this and putting this image or these first two images together, especially with your first ones, right?
Yeah. So, well, I'm lucky because I work in that field. So these are my coworkers. So these are actual paramedics and firefighters that I work with. That's the ambulance that I work in. So while we're on shift or after shift, I brought my camera to work and I asked these guys, hey guys, can you help me stage this picture? And we just set it up. So that was actually me. That's a picture that they opened up the back of the door and I had my camera, and I think, I can't remember what lens I used, but probably a pretty wide angle lens, because he's pretty distorted at the bottom, which is kind of how I like that look, because it makes people think, well, is this a painting or is this a photograph with the distortion in it? But yeah, so I took the picture, and at that time I was shooting multiple exposures. So I was doing some HDR stuff. I don't do that anymore. I just shoot raw now and just use that one raw file and manipulate it that way. But this picture, I shot 3 exposures and then layered it. And then I basically just drew on top of the photograph, layered different colors. Then I kind of layered in the spirit on top. So what I did for the spirit with his hands down, we did this picture, and then everyone left except for the patient, who's also a firefighter with us. I had him just put his arms up. So he was in the same position, had us put his arms up. Then I masked that picture. I just inverted it. So his arms looked like they were coming down, and just desaturated it and blurred it, and then just kind of painted it in through a mask. So it looked a bit more transparent. And then on the monitor, all the stuff in my images is quite accurate. So I'll manipulate the vital signs, and I just drew that in through layers. So I just use lots and lots of layers. You know, I don't think I'm actually technically a very good photographer or post processor, to be honest with you. I think this is what I need to do. How am I going to do that? And then I research it and find out how to do that. And eventually I kind of developed my own style, but there's probably a better and easier way to do what I'm doing than the way I'm actually doing it. But yeah, this is early. So my technique's a little bit earlier.
Yeah,
my technique's a little bit different now.
If you're getting the story out there and you're achieving the piece of work with the final image that you want, it doesn't matter how we do it or whether we're any good at any specific bit. Your skill is the storytelling, and it looks great. I love how much detail there is. Like if you can get any of these images and look closely at them, you know, there's a whole story just in the bottom right hand corner of that photograph with the stuff that's, you know, lying on the floor, and, you know, as you see the detail that's in the monitors, and there's lots of stories within just this main image. The detail is incredible.
Yeah. And those that are in my community, and I know they try to do this, they'll look at my images and they'll look for mistakes. They're like, because even like the IVs that I use, the colors have to be accurate. But the thing is, when I recreate these images, I remembered that call, even though it happened probably 15 years ago now. I remembered every detail of it. So I knew where I put the IV in. Like for those of us that are paramedics and use IVs, we know the colors, right? So if that's for a trauma like this and the IV is red or pink, which is a 20 gauge needle, you would not use a 20 gauge needle IV for this patient. It would be green. It would be an 18. So it's guys look at that. They're like, oh, damn, why did you put a 20 gauge needle in his AC? Why did you do that? That doesn't make sense. So it does have to be really accurate. And I also I put a lot of Easter eggs in a lot of my images.
I was going to ask that. Are there Easter eggs in there? Are there little hidden messages within certain parts?
In this one, no. Like I said, this is the first one that I've done, but
and you're
later on, I started adding stuff in there. Yeah.
Incredible. So we have there's questions coming in. We have a lot of images to look at. We could be here for a while, so I'm gonna move on. But maybe we can talk about some more of the geeky side of it, the technical side, as we move on. So I'll skip past this this first image. Oh, the other thing I was going to ask is, and I think you answered it yourself. You've got two paramedics here who are colleagues. Is it also a colleague that's lying down? Who's the victim?
He's a firefighter. Yeah, he's a firefighter. He's an EMT now. He's actually in paramedic school. Now. So they're all everyone in my images. They are real emergency workers. I don't get models to come in and pretend.
Are they up for it? Are they very open to doing this, or does it take some persuasion?
For this one they were pretty open for it. But now, because a lot of people are familiar with my artwork, I have no problem finding people that want to be in my images. It's pretty easy. I'm lucky that way. But they have to be. I try not to use the same people twice. So I'm kind of running out of people. But I don't have a problem finding people that
way to make it difficult for yourself.
I know, right? I'm like, God, whose idea was that? Why did I do that?
You said this was 14 years ago. Nobody will remember if you use them twice. But I guess like a lot of photography, when you're trying to get started out and you're trying to find models for any genre, it's always harder at the start, and then as your portfolio builds up, as your reputation becomes known for the amazing work that you're doing, then I definitely can understand that people would be willing to do it. But maybe do they also find it therapeutic themselves to be part of these images?
Yeah, I think so, because they're, especially the guys in this picture. I've known them for a long time, and a lot of them, some of them are doing a lot of mental health initiative programs themselves. So we support each other as much as we can, and those guys have been great. They still work at our department, and I love them like brothers.
Right. Move on to the next one.
Yeah. So this one, there's not any trauma in this one. There isn't any angels or demons or any Easter eggs in this one. But this is the one image that when I go and speak at conferences, at EMS conferences or emergency services conferences, this is the one where people look by and I have this on a big banner when I have a booth, and they'll point to it and they'll like, yep, this is the one that they really connect with.
Really resonates
because it's just a mess. It just really resonates with those of us that are in the field. Right. So this is after a call where, the stretcher's in the emergency room, and then the paramedic is coming back and processing what he went through. And the idea of this one is because I wanted it to be a little bit darker. So I kind of added that little sepia filter on it. So it's got a little bit of that color in it. And he's just sitting there thinking and processing what he just did and thinking, I got to clean this mess up, and we might just have to do it all over again right away. When I do the photography, I already have the idea in my mind of what I want it to portray. And sometimes it's difficult to let my models know that. And this guy, he's a EMT firefighter in our department. And I wanted them it takes some coaching to get them into that emotion or get that feeling. Because if they know that they're in a picture, and even if they have a little smile in their face, it's going to ruin the whole picture. It's not going to have that emotional effect to it. And so I tell them, look, I can do all the post-processing I can, but unless that emotion is in your face, it's not going to work. Mind you, now with the new Photoshop updates, you can do a lot of facial stuff now, which is great. But I really have to coach. So sometimes I need to sit down with them and talk to them about for 20 minutes and really get them into that feeling before I photograph them. That's really important for me. And in this case, Doug really did that well for me.
Yeah. Let's see. Get this to move to the next one.
Yeah. So this one, I've done a lot of. This is in Las Vegas. This portrait was done 30 days after the shooting in Las Vegas. I was there on a conference, and I know a lot of the paramedics there. And I said, hey, what are the chances of getting some of the crews that responded to that call together for this group portrait? And they were all for it. So this was such a powerful photo session. This is the first time this crew had been together since that tragedy, really. And we don't often get together in a non-emergency way, like with fire, police, ambulance. We don't usually get to be together unless, bad things are happening. So it was really great to have this crew together. And this is the crew that responded to that incident. And it was only 30 days after. With permission, one of the sheriffs that were killed that day, I included him in this picture. So if you look on the left-hand side, there's a little space there. And if you looked really close, I have his spirit is there with his team, with his crew. And I got that with permission with the family. So he is there with his emergency services family. It turned out great. Yeah, it was a really powerful photo session. This was when I was, this is in England. I was in England a couple of years ago, which I love. I had a great trip there. One thing I'm really disappointed about is I was supposed to be going back there and speaking at the Union Jack Club in London this summer, which I was super looking forward to. And I hope we get a chance to do that again. But this was, you look at it, and again, depending on your own experiences, you're going to have different emotions about it.
Absolutely.
But for me, as an emergency worker, we unfortunately go to a lot of pediatric trauma and pediatric end of life scenarios. Yeah. So this is a SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome scenario, which unfortunately I've been on too many times. So the paramedic here, he's holding this dead baby, which is, even to say that is horrible. Yeah. But the spirit of this child is smiling, and he's reaching up for the paramedic, which makes me feel better.
Yeah.
It's in his face. So if the spirit's face is, he's happy and he's looking up and he's reaching for the paramedic.
Yeah. Yeah. Super powerful.
Yeah.
And then so not just in the ambulances, but actually in the ER rooms as well.
Yeah, so I don't work in the hospital, but as my artwork started to get out there and became a bit more popular, people wanted me to come and photograph their environment. And this was in the OR for a team that I interviewed them first, because my photography is really based on emotion and experiences. Before I even start or decide on how it's going to look, before I come up with the concept, I really need to know why they want me to do it. So I interviewed this team, and they were doing an operation on a friend of theirs who actually passed. So this is them working on their friend. And if you look closely between the doctor and the nurse there, he's there, his spirit is there, his face is there, his arms are kind of around them. Yeah. And he's saying, God, I hope you guys are going to have a good day today. And then the next picture kind of portrays on what actually happened. So he didn't survive. His aorta popped and they couldn't control it. So his spirit is back against the wall, and the team, they're quite upset. Yeah. The nurse is holding the hand. The anesthesiologist was the only member that didn't know the patient. So she's, turning off her machines and doing stuff. But yeah, it was an emotional thing, a time for an experience for them. And then I was lucky enough to, how many other photographers get an opportunity to do some photos in an operating room? Again, it's all staged, none of it's real, right? Yeah. Based on a real thing. But you don't, sometimes I think, God, as a photographer, I stop myself and think of how I'm so lucky that I have access to some of the scenes that I can shoot. So yeah, that's what that was. So then I started doing a lot of in-hospital stuff. I still do a lot of that work now. I do a series of emergency rooms where I follow. Again, it's all staged, and it's good training for the emergency room staff. They'll do like a mock scenario where a patient comes in, and it's all scenario based, and I'll kind of photograph it and do a whole series, and then post a few pictures every day, and kind of make it like an ongoing thing. But yeah, I really, really enjoy doing that kind of work.
Yeah, it must be a very difficult scenario to lose someone, but when they're a member of your team or someone that the whole team knows, you can see the impact that has as the teams, still have a job to do, right? They still have procedures to follow, machines to manage and shut down, but they're dealing with personal grief at this moment, and I think that shows in this image.
Yeah, and the photography seems to help some way, and I think because when I posted this picture, other hospital workers, they really connected with it again based on their own experiences. So yeah, and I try to make the images when I process them. I try to make them look between a photograph. Some parts I make very painterly, and then other parts I make pretty clear. So when people look at it, it's like, what, is that a photograph? It can't be photographed because there's a ghost there, but it can't be a painting because parts of it are so detailed. So I like that it kind of messes with people's minds. It makes it an interesting. So I think about composition. I think about, where am I going to put things? I want the viewer to look at it for a long time, with their eyes to move up and down and all around. And I think now when people look at my work, they look for things that I've hidden.
Well, the skill of any photographer is, obviously controlling light, but great composition to make people look at the image the way you want people to look at the image. You want people to read the image the way you want. So that composition, the deliberate way that you're placing, in this instance, the ghost in that dominant upper third of the image, but I say ghost. I guess the spirit is a better word here, but
ghost, whatever.
Yeah, but then also using a different texture, like that painterly effect on the spirit, and yet the people are definitely a photograph. So it just draws your eyes to it and tells a very different story. That spirit is in a very different place from where these people are. I've got to talk about the blood.
Yes.
Without being crass and without making light of it, when you said none of the trauma is there, does that include things like the blood on the gauze and that? Is that all added post production?
That's all added. Yeah. That's all added. And if anything, this is probably less graphic than it actually is when you're in a pot. So well, in this picture, what I really want is people to look at it after looking at the first one. So they look at the first one to see how it's going, and then this one. But I wanted people to notice that the nurse was holding the patient's hand kind of after. So I wanted them to kind of look around first, and as they're kind of processing it and kind of getting what is happening, then they see the nurse holding the hand, and then that's kind of like the punch to the guts. Kind of, it's like, oh yeah, this is.
Yeah, holding a hand but like sunk to her knees. It's it's a powerful message. Right, man. This one's
Again, this one based on your own experiences. And for emergency services, the worst or the toughest calls to process and manage are the ones that have to do with kids. So that's a lot of my artwork has to do with that. And again, for the average person looking at this looks like a sad picture. But for me, this was such a therapeutic image for me, based on the actual. And I'm not going to get into details of what the call was, but when I look at this call, the way that I see this little girl is much better than the way I actually saw her. Right. So when I processed this image, when I was done, it actually changed my memory, right? It changed how I remembered the event or the car accident that this was. because I had that image in my head for a long time. I couldn't get it out of my head. And there was this little doll involved. And so in this picture, I put her as this little angel girl that still has her doll.
Mm-hmm.
And she's looking at me, the firefighter, with compassion, right?
Yeah.
Kind of saying, you know, I'm okay. I got my doll. I'm in a good place. Everything's okay.
Yeah.
So that made me feel better. So now when I think of that call, I think of this picture
You think of
instead
this
of
rather
thinking
than
what I actually saw.
yeah. So
Yeah.
this is where you go to when that memory comes comes back to you.
Yeah.
And you know,
yeah, because I spend a lot of time, like a week or so, and there's a lot of emotion involved when I process it. I'm trying to recreate how I felt versus what I saw. But again, composition is important, lighting is important, because I'm really trying to portray an emotion, right? And I'm trying to, and I don't know if that naturally comes out because my motivation is, I'm quite emotional when I'm creating when I'm processing the photography. You know, the actual photo itself was just, you know, it was the firefighter holding the doll there, but you know, the color, and I don't know if that just naturally comes out that way just because of the emotions that I'm feeling while I'm processing it. But I guess I'm lucky that I'm able to have that emotion flow into my post-processing. And sometimes I don't know how it's going to look. I have an idea in my head of what I want. Like I have a concept, but often that concept is different than what I actually end up with. And a lot of times it's even better. Right? This is a powerful one. And
and I'm sure, as you say, subject to your own experiences and stuff, people just like reading a book or looking at a great painting or, you know, looking at a photograph. Everybody's going to have their own experiences to kind of tell their story or to interpret it the way that they want. But when I look at your work here and the color tones and the treatments that you give to your images, for me, it's, you know, it's almost like you as the artist, you know, this is my thoughts, you can correct me, but it's like you want to let people know that this isn't about the real life, the real moment. This is a story about the thoughts and the processes, and so therefore it's deliberately not realistic in colors or textures. That's the kind of interpretation I had of your images. Would that be close
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I'm not trying to recreate what I saw. I'm trying to recreate what I felt.
Yeah.
Right. So there is a lot of post-processing in it, and there's a lot of technically, you know, photography stuff I shouldn't be doing. But for me, it's about the end image, right? It's not about following. I have I have a process that I'm trying to achieve. You know, all my photography is the end of result of something bigger, right? There's purpose to the images I create. And, you know, once I have that idea in my head and I have this emotion in my mind that I need to portray into a photograph, the more authentic that I can be to making the end image match that complex emotion I'm having, the more successful I am at that picture, right? So that's what I gauge those are the rules that I go by. You know, it's not, oh, okay, this picture's too warm, it's too hot. Oh, you know, the depth of field is off, or, oh, you know, I shouldn't be shooting this and, you know, my shutter speed was too slow. I was like, no, it has to match the feeling that I have. So I really don't have rules when I create the artwork, when I process the photography.
You use the word that your images to me, they're, you know, the textures, the colors, the story, the juxtaposition sometimes of this, you know, the subject and the, you know, the victim or whatever. They're very complex pieces of art, and as you said, the emotions that people have are super complex. So that's that kind of marrying of the artwork with the emotion for me that I think is so powerful in your imagery.
Yeah, and I think for, you know, photography and artwork, you know, if people look at it and they have like a visceral response to it, either they love it or they hate it, then I think you're successful, right? That is good. That is a good art picture, a good photograph. My mom does not understand my artwork. She's like, damn, why is that so gross? Why did you do that? I don't understand. Why is it like, she doesn't get it, right?
Yeah.
But that's okay. It's totally okay. And yeah, I get a lot of mail of, you know, people, you know, they just do not like my artwork to the point where they took the time to send me a message about it. I'm like, that's great.
Yeah.
That is a successful, it connected with somebody, right? So
and
that's
you get
great.
to
This one
you,
is
you
when I
then
was
get to
in,
engage with them, right? They've started a
yeah.
conversation, and then you're able to have a meaningful engagement rather than somebody just give it a thumbs up. Hey, it's good, right?
Yeah, and that's what I really like when I share it on social media. Because a lot of my stuff is emotional. It's based on emotion, and a lot of people will come in and they'll go, I don't. Why are people so sad? And people will say, I'm a paramedic firefighter for 20 years and I'm fine. Like, what's the big deal? I don't get it. And then people will talk, like they'll communicate. Mostly, it's respectful.
Yep.
And they'll say, hey, that's great that you feel that way, but a lot of us don't. A lot of us don't feel that way.
Yeah.
And there's that communication that goes back and forth. And if my photography, kind of sparks that conversation, then that's great.
Absolutely.
Right. This picture's in Finland. I had a great time in Finland. I went there twice last year, and I toured the country and met some amazing people. Everyone in Finland looks like supermodels there. It was great. And so I did a bunch of artwork for them, and then spoke at a conference that they had. And this is an emergency room. And again, if you look closely at this one, there's the spirit of the patient is standing there amongst them, as the team there is processing what they had just done.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your travels. I know from looking at your work, when I see, British NHS, you mentioned this, this one, you've been to Poland. Tell us about your travels. Is it, you mentioned conferences and other, events that you go to. Is this things you're invited to speak at, or do you travel to do commissions? What does your travel look like?
Yeah, most of the travel, I get invited to speak and exhibit my artwork. And when I speak, I talk about mental health and recovery and post-traumatic growth and those types of things for emergency workers. So the majority of my travels are hospital, fire, EMS conferences, which is, God, I'm so lucky that I get to do that, because I love to travel and meet my peers, which is wonderful. And then sometimes I get commissioned, so they'll fly me out and I'll do custom art pieces for their service to do prints for their new training center or something. But yeah, I'm so lucky that I get to travel, and I've been to lots of places that I probably never would have gone to otherwise. And I have lots of stuff that was on the books this year, but yeah, England and in Finland, and lots of all through Canada and the States, and and through Central America, and it's been wonderful. So I'm really lucky that way, and wonderful experiences. So it's not just going there and speaking at these conferences, it's meeting my peers. I learned so much about vodka in Poland. I thought I didn't like vodka until I went to Poland and realized, yeah, no, I think I do like vodka. It just has to be good vodka. Yeah, those guys it was a great time, and did some great work there. It was, so I'm really lucky that I get to do that.
A great part of your photographic career. That's wonderful. You get to do that, and the speaking and and helping people all over the world. I mean, you can do that. Obviously, your work's on your SmugMug site, so everybody can go look at it globally. But to be there in person and help people, as you say, interact with your peers, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. I speak, and I'll usually have a booth there, and I'll sign prints, and people will come up, and I don't really know, how they react to them. But some people will come up and they'll just start breaking down and crying because, based on their experiences, or I created an image that just got so deep inside their head, based on their experience, that it's, it's a really strong connection, which sets me back, to be honest, when that happens. But then it makes me feel good because I feel I'm really helping people through photography, which is, God, that's a great bonus.
Yeah. This is, we talk about, connecting to people in so many different ways, and your own experiences and stuff, and as a father of 2 young kids, every time one of your pictures comes up with a child in it, it automatically, punches you right in the chest, and this was one of those images.
Yeah. Well, this one, the kid was fine. So this was based on a kid this boy having an asthma attack. He was fine. And that's not what really stuck with me on this call. This isn't why I created this image. It was for the kid's father. Yeah. Right. So the kid's father called us, and he was having an asthma attack, and we gave him some bronchodilators, and he was okay. But the father was still quite upset. So when I talked to him, I said, "Hey, your son's going to be okay. Is there anything else I can help you with?" And then he said, "Yeah, my wife usually deals with our son's asthma, and she just died 2 days ago." And I'm like, "Oh my God." So this is called the mother's undying love. So if you look on the left side of this picture, I put the spirit of the mother there, still with her son. So what a lot of times for me, it's not the patients themselves, it's the family around the patients that really stick with me. Those are the emotions I need to process. And this is a good example of that. The mother's undying love. So I still put the mother is still there.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe she was.
I heard someone recently say something along the lines, I'm paraphrasing here, but I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of what I do to the people I leave behind. And that's that stuck with me.
And we see that emergency services, we see that when that happens.
Yeah.
And that's what sticks with me. But for this one, photograph wise, this boy, I really wanted him to put his head down and tilt his eyes up and look at the camera. If you look at the full resolution of this one, his eyes were piercing, just staring at me, which is great. And actually the woman in the back there, that's the son's real mother in this picture. But I kind of had this framed up and kind of knew how I was gonna do it. But the same thing, I didn't really know. I had the basic concept of what I wanted it to portray. I have the idea of how I want the emotion to feel, not so much about the colors and the textures, and that just kind of comes while I process it. So
how long would it take you, going back to the sort of technical aspects, to create a piece of work like this? Is this a single day in an ambulance? Is it 5 minutes in an ambulance? Is it in between shouts? How long do you get to take the actual photograph?
The actual photo is really quick. So in this one, I took the picture of the boy and the two women, and then I had the other person come in and sit there and took that picture as a separate picture, and then I'm done. Like 10 minutes, I'm done. The actual photo session. And I don't bring a big lighting setup. At this point, I think I was still doing overexposure, like the multiple exposures. So if I wanted a part to be brighter, then I just kind of masked in a little bit of a lighter section of that. So I kind of use the light that way.
Range already.
Yeah. But now I just shoot in RAW, and then with the cameras now, you can do whatever you want with a good RAW file.
And then how long does it take you to create the piece of art after you've done that?
Yeah, so that's a lot longer. That takes a lot longer. That's this one probably took about a week. It's not like a straight week, but I'll work on it for a couple hours. And then I need to reset my eyes. It's like smelling perfume. You have to kind of reset and smell the coffee beans kind of. And then I'll come back, and sometimes I'll come back the second day. I'm like, I hate it. Looking at this, the pillow's too yellow. I got to change that. Everything looks too yellow. No, I don't like it. And then just start over again. But it will take about a week before I come back and look at it the next day. And the next day I'm like, that's it. That's the emotion I'm feeling I want to portray. Then I know it's done.
Talking to a lot of my peers and, the great photographers of the world that do a lot of post-production in their work, something that comes up a lot is knowing when you're done. Is there a moment when you're finished, or can it go on forever?
I think if I look at it in 2 days in a row and I don't want to change anything, then I know it's done. But even looking at this one, I would have done this one differently. The stuff I want to change on this one. But once it's done and I share it, I don't change them.
Yeah.
I don't, because it's important for, like, I look at some of my photography, I'm like, oh, that's horrible. But I think it's important I don't change them, because I want to see the progression, and I'm still changing my style and technique as computer stuff and camera stuff changes. And I think any artist does that. Their style will change. Sometimes get better, sometimes get worse, but it's also personal, right? So for me, it's how I'm portraying that emotion.
I'll tell you an interesting story. We were very fortunate to work with the incredible Brooke Shaden, who's this incredible self-portrait
Brooke
artist. Yeah, Brooke is
Brooke's
phenomenal.
great.
And
I love
her
her stuff.
photography is very dark, and a lot of demons and stuff that she's showcasing in her images. Yet she's the most joyful, wonderful person, but she loves horror and all that type of stuff, and has a fascination with death. And we talk about it on our SmugMug Live episode, but she was talking about an image that she shared, and she's like, once you share an image, it connects with people, and you can't change it, because you then affect that connection it has with the people you've already shared it with. And she'd shared an image that she thought was too dark, and I think she actually took it down or removed it, and she got comments from people saying, you have to put that back up. That picture means so much to me. You can't change it. So once you share it, you've connected with people. Important to then move on.
Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah. This is in Poland. God, I had a great time in Poland. So the great thing about Poland, I learned so much when I travel, and I spend time with fellow paramedics and firefighters. But these guys were great. This crew that I was with. But this is called the in-between. So I started developing. Because unfortunately, or sometimes fortunately, I see death a lot, and so I started incorporating the Grim Reaper in a lot of my photography. So here's a good example of the paramedics in the back of their ambulance, and one's checking their pulse and realizing, hey, this guy doesn't have a pulse. We're going to have to defibrillate. So here's his spirit. Yeah, it's called the in-between, where is he going to go to the left, or is he going to stay to the right? Right? He's there. And that happens to us. So for those of us that work in emergency services, where they're alive, and then we realize, there's something different. The color's changing, or the monitor's changing, or alarms are going off, and they'll check for a pulse. We check for a pulse, and we're like, oh crap, there's no pulse. We gotta do something.
This person's about to leave,
this person's about to leave.
Yeah.
And let's try to pull him back and get him back in his body, so to speak. But
battling those kind of forces that are outside, trying to pull him in the wrong direction. Huh?
Yeah, and who knows? Like, there's, and I don't know if I had it in this series that you're doing, but you don't. I've delivered lots of babies in the back of the ambulance, and people have died in the back of the ambulance, and I can feel this energy change when that happens. So who knows what's going on? That stuff that we can't see. So I portray that in some of my photography, because that's part of my process, and that's part of the emotions that I'm feeling. So I'm lucky that I have an outlet for that I can do that. And I think this is one of my favorite pictures. I think this one's really, I have this one printed on a big canvas in my home gallery. I love this one. Yeah. So here's another one. This is the Grim Reaper again. This is called the Death Takes a Smoke Break. So he actually has a cigarette in his hand with smoke coming up. And it's because, sometimes when we do these calls, it's every call that we do is just death. Injuries incompatible with life, or natural end of life situations. And I think, God, death is with us, doing a ride along with us today. And that was kind of the idea for this picture. I shot it with a really super wide angle lens. I just took a picture of my buddy there and sitting in the back of our ambulance. And then I used a stock photo to mask the Grim Reaper in. This is an older picture, and I probably would have done this one differently now, but I don't want to change it, because it, again, like this one connected with a lot of people. But he's not someone that the idea of this was that he's not someone that we're against. He's more like a coworker. That's maybe not a coworker, but he's just someone doing a ride along with us. Like, he's got his job, I got my job. He's going to win every time for all of us eventually. But some days he feels a lot more present than others. And that was the idea of this image.
I like this idea of, come on, Reaper, take a break, And
that's what it was. It was like, when we take a break, is he going to take a break too with us? Or is he going to, so that's kind of personalizes him and humanizes him a little bit. This one, there's a ton going on in this one.
There's a lot.
So again, this is going with the Grim Reaper. The Grim Reaper's on the left. He's sitting there. His sickle's kind of over the top left side. If you look on the right, there's an angel in the reflection of the window there, with her hand on the shoulder of the paramedic. And if you look in the middle and the top, there's the spirit of the patient who's screaming, because he can see the Grim Reaper and he can see the the angel. So he knows he's in trouble. Meanwhile, the paramedics, we're doing our thing. We're starting IVs. We're doing airway. We're going to do our thing, but we're not aware of what else is going on. So this one's called Behind the Scenes, and that's kind of goes back to that feeling of, we are not every day. We don't do this all the time, but often we are at that end of life point for some people, and who knows what happens. Like me and a lot of other, and I'm sure lots of people that are watching this that are paramedics or nurses and firefighters and police, that when people die, weird stuff happens. And that's kind of what this is. And I'm convinced there's something after. I don't know what it is, but something happens.
Yeah. When I was looking at this one, what struck me was how dominant you have the Grim Reaper in this image. Like he takes up a huge portion of the image. He's, his scythe is right above the patient. And to me, it spoke about how hard the job is. Like the odds are stacked against you, kind of thing. The angel is, to me, this is my interpretation. The angel's more there comforting the paramedic rather than there for the benefit of the patient, and almost supporting you. The paramedic saying, you can do this, even though the dominance, the odds are stacked against the patient. There's a lot going on in this. Really.
Yeah, and I kind of did that on purpose, where we're like the Grim Reaper's waiting for his dinner, right? He's waiting for us to either make a mistake, or even we can do everything we need to do and it still doesn't work. But he's just waiting, like he's waiting for his opportunity for him to take his prize, and that's why he's so close and so dominant. Yeah. But we're totally unaware. Like we're just doing our job. Right. Yep. So the Grim Reaper's in this one as well. Again, this is darker. The color's different. The Grim Reaper's on the right, standing behind the nurse. So the Grim Reaper knows it's time. The nurse knows it's time. The spirit of the patient is trying to unplug his life support. So the patient even knows it's time.
Yeah. Meanwhile,
the family member is there holding the hand, telling us to carry on, to keep doing what we're doing. Oh, sorry. Hello?
Someone phoning you.
Yeah. Sorry, I disconnected it. Sorry about that. That was my wife phoning. That's okay. I should have turned my phone off. She knows I'm doing this. So anyways, can you see me? It says it's still connecting. Can you hear me?
No, we can see you. Yeah, I don't know. It does say you're trying to join in that dial-in window, but I think we're good. Yeah, you're here.
Okay. Because I can't see anything on my screen now.
Oh, you can't? Okay, well why don't you just
disconnecting?
Why don't we
click on the gear?
You click on the gear, see if that brings you back.
Nope.
Or if it's, I think that phone call's confused the connection. Why don't we just let you jump out and jump back in? Okay.
Okay.
Because I still got you. But I'm just going to throw you out and you can dial back in. While he's doing that, it looks like his phone call disconnected him, but we'll just bring him back into the stream. And nope, he's still struggling to get back in. So just give us a little second. I hope you're all enjoying this. There's some great comments there. Let me just connect Daniel. Let's see. Yeah, we're struggling to get him back in the chat here. Let's see if we can do this. Nope, we've been disconnected for some reason. Hopefully you are all still with me. Is everybody, give me a little shout out in the chat if we still got this thing going live. Hey Daniel, you can't hear me, can you? Yeah, hopefully we are still live. Sorry folks, just bear with us. We got disconnected there due to Daniel getting a phone call, and we're struggling to get him to come back in. Hopefully we are still live on air. I think we are. Daniel, can you hear me? Yeah, you can still hear me, but for some reason I can't bring you into the chat. How's that? Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, there we go.
Yep, there you are.
Yeah, we're back.
Yeah,
Sorry about that, folks.
I'll let my wife that you totally interrupted our show. It's my fault. I should have my phone on airplane mode, which it is
okay.
now.
That's okay. Just tell her she owes us for that one.
Yeah, and she knows. She knows that I was doing this.
Sorry, folks. Everybody's letting us know that we're still connected because I was trying to multitask there, folks. Thanks for sticking with us. So this image, you actually called this one DNR ? Do not resuscitate ? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's Dewey. The family members there holding the hand. She wants us to do everything we can, but everyone knows it's time. And for the longest time, I would think, that just let him go. It's his time. But, it's different. It's a different perspective for us. This woman's been married to this man for 40, 50, 60 years. And it's naturally she's having a hard time letting go. And I think what I try to do is have more compassion than I have in the past in these situations. So when I did this picture, I really wanted to focus in on her. Right. So when you look at the picture, your eye kind of goes right to the middle, looks at her, and then it goes to the nurse. And then when you're at the nurse, you kind of see what's that behind the nurse. Oh, it's the Grim Reaper. Or you might see what's that white blob by the bottom left? And you're like, oh, that's the spirit of the guy trying to unplug his stuff. So yeah, so there's a lot. It's a complex idea that I tried to put in this one picture. Yeah. And unfortunately, I think it's something for me pre-hospitally I deal with, but I think that nurses and emerge in ICU and doctors that they deal with this, and that leaves a heavy burden. Again, it's not the patient, it's the family members that kind of leave the residue of mental injury for us. So yeah, it's tough. This one, if you look at this one, you may think that it's a sad picture, but it's not. This is called Finding Peace. So this one is this paramedic is being comforted by an angel, which represents recovery or treatment. I made the angel translucent except for when he was making contact. So his hand is solid, his forehead is solid. And the reason that he is connecting with him, and it's a good picture, if you look closely on the top right-hand side of this picture, there's a devil there with his arms up and he's screaming. Because that devil, or the PTSD or the mental injury or whatever it is, he lost the grips on that paramedic because the paramedic's getting the treatment and help that he needs. Yeah. Right. I shot the original picture of this. I shot this in front of my garage, and this guy, he's a paramedic friend of mine, and that's his dad. And they agreed to come. So it was a picture of the two of them just in front of my garage. It took 2 seconds to take the photo, but it looks nothing like the original picture that I took. Yeah. But yeah, this is the cover of my second book. I love this picture. Some people buy this picture, they'll tell me they'll have it in their office. I'm like, oh, did you notice the devil in the top right-hand corner? Like, no, I didn't even know that it was there. But it completely changes the whole idea of the picture. Yeah. And I did that on purpose. I wanted him to be kind of fading away, fading into the background, because he's losing his grip, and now he's mad because he can't manipulate that paramedic, can't get him back because he's getting the help that he needs. And, as the viewer, you can look at that angel, and that could be your family. It could be your therapist. It could be, something religious. It could be whatever it is that supports you.
Support network.
That support network, whatever it is for you, is kind of the idea. So this picture is very positive for me. This is a really happy, positive recovery image. So here's another little angel girl. And again, there's a big backstory behind this picture. But here's a police officer in their dress uniform. And here's the spirit of this little girl. And the one thing I really like about this picture is that she's wrapping him, supporting him, because now he has to live with the memories of what happened. Yeah. So the spirit of this little girl, who's now an angel, she's supporting him, wrapped his wing around him. And her little pinky is on his big man finger, right? Which
That
I
is
love that, right?
it's the most powerful part of that image. You know,
Yeah.
there's many times I kind of interlock fingers with my own daughter just like that. You know, kind of subconsciously. You know, you just that piece of contact is so important,
Yeah.
and it's a beautiful image, but that tiny little piece for me is wow, so powerful.
Yeah. It's just that little connection,
Yeah.
right? She's not holding his hand fully. It's just, look, I'm here. Right. And I wanted to put that bright light kind of back over his right shoulder, showing, she's just kind of come down to give him the support when he needs it. Maybe he's just having a bad day that day, as it is. When we have these mental injuries and this trauma, we have good days and bad days. So the idea is that she is coming down to give him the support that he needs and unfortunately for us, for those of us that, have PTSD, a bad day could eventually that could lead to our last day potentially. So it's,
Yeah.
so that was the idea of this one. Again, it's about support. It's about, giving validation and support and recognizing some of the after effects of the events that we have. But for the photo, so taking the picture, this was, I took this picture in a living room. I don't have my own studio. I wish I did. Probably be a lot less work for me if I did. But this is in a living room. So I photoshopped all the chairs out and all the pictures out. I think I left the same floor in, but then I changed the background. So this was lots of layers with the background and then the angel. Then I put the wings on. And, the little girl for this, she was great. Her name is Georgia. She was wonderful. She was perfect. But yeah, again, this is a pretty powerful picture. And even if you don't have, if you're not an emergency worker and you're not, you don't have any experiences with trauma with kids, then you look at this picture and you can draw your own conclusions on what it's about. Maybe this is this guy's daughter and that he lost, and he's, remembering her in a positive way, that she's still there and she's still loving him, right? That's again, it's emotion. What I try to do is portray emotion in photography.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions queued up here, and people are itching at the bit to get me to answer some of them. So we still have some more images. If we have time, we'll there's definitely a few that I still want to get to. You have such an amazing portfolio. We could just look through your portfolio all day long, but I want to get to some people's questions here. Question from Susie Matthews. She says, Dan, you did a piece a while ago featuring a demon on one side of a bridge and a responder on the other. It resonated with me a lot of the time with my work. Can you remember the background of that?
Oh yeah, I remember that one very clearly. So the idea of that picture is when I go and speak about post-traumatic growth, part of the process for healing for me was making that realization that, tomorrow may not be a better day. Tomorrow was just worse. And I had to take control of my life and take responsibility for my recovery. So the idea of that picture is that paramedic's on the left-hand side of that bridge, and he's looking over that bridge. He needs to cross that bridge, but on the other side of that bridge, and the other side of that river, is this giant demon, which again represents his trauma. But he needs to cross that bridge. He needs to cross the bridge and face that trauma and get the help that he needs and get the support to do that. But he needs to make that decision. He needs to know that a big part of the healing process, and again, this is all reflective of my own experiences. For me, I needed to know that I need to take my life I shouldn't say that. I don't want to take my life. I needed to take control of my life and get better. And I realized it wasn't going to happen on its own. And it's tough. It's a hard decision. But once I made that decision, that's when my healing process started. So that was the idea of that picture.
Right.
I like that one too. That's a great picture.
Yeah. Another question here from Christoph. What is the common element of paramedics in countries that you have been to? As you visit your peers around the world, is there those common elements you see that are global issues? Yeah.
A paramedic, I'll go to Poland and hang out with the paramedics there, and it's like hanging out with paramedics back in Canada or the States. We all have the same personalities. We're all these type A personalities. I think a common element is for paramedics. I think we're all pretty intelligent. I think we're all pretty smart. Being a paramedic is pretty complex. We have to think on our feet pretty quick. So I think we all have a common. We all want to help people. That's very similar in all the places I've been to. And you know what? It's very similar in the trauma that we experience too. You know, people have heart attacks in Poland the same way they have heart attacks in Canada, in the States, and in Scotland. So our treatments are the same, or similar rather. So our experiences are the same. So the effects of the experiences that we have affect us similar as well. So the signs and symptoms of trauma that we have in Canada are the same in paramedics all around the world that I meet. And when I travel and I sit down with my peers, I talk to them about that. I ask them about their mental health support programs that they have in their country or their work, and you know, what do they do and what program? Because and often they'll do things that other countries aren't doing, that I try to promote, and hopefully other countries will adapt or bring that on. So yeah, the one thing I did find when I was in England, the very first day I went in, and we went into the start of their shift, and they're having their morning meeting, and they're talking about shoot times and paperwork, and I'm like, this could be my meeting. They are talking about the exact same things that we talk about in my fire department. It was so similar, and I just felt so at home. I could have just sat there, and it would have been like my officer telling me the same thing. So yeah, it's a big community, and I don't think we realize how similar we all are. That's a great question.
Yeah, how global that is. You could have just joined a shift and done some work.
I think I could have, yeah. I think I could have.
Not a question, but I thought this was a great comment. Northern Medic 1 says, as a practicing medic for 20 years, I can honestly say that the artwork produced gives insight to those who do not practice and support to those that do. Respect, love, and hugs.
Oh, great. Thank you. That's a big deal for me. Like as a working paramedic, to get that support from my peers, that I sincerely appreciate that. Because sometimes I create this artwork and I'm like, oh my God, what are people going to think? Because I don't create the artwork thinking for other people. I don't think, okay, well, people are going to like this. I create them based on my own experiences. And sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to put it out there and we'll see what happens. Yeah. And the kind of the ones that are most risky seem to be the ones that are, seem to resonate the most with people. Cool. Some people.
Yeah. Now it's my camera that's bugging out. Apologies, folks. We're having a lot of technical glitches today. I don't know why.
You're doing good though, Alistair. You're rolling with the punches. You could be a paramedic. You could be emergency services. Nothing goes the way it's supposed to.
Every day's an engineering problem. I don't know why. There we go. We're back. It's a one-man show. You know, lots of buttons to press and lots of things to twiddle. And sometimes, you know, technology just gets tired. Let's see. Another question from Rob. Thanks for the question. Rob says, how often do your own images, especially during the creation phase, cause a visceral emotion and psychological reaction in you?
All the time. Sometimes when I'm speaking, I'll start crying when I'm doing my sessions. Because when I do my session, I talk about my own experiences. So I share the symptoms, the signs and symptoms that I had, to the point of almost committing suicide. So it's a pretty serious, dark topic. And then I focus more on what I do to get better and focus on treatment and recovery and post-traumatic growth. But when I talk about the images, I get pretty in depth as the background for the images. And yeah, I get quite emotional when I think about it. Even now, when I start talking about even some of the images we talked about today, I got a little verklempt talking about them because they're pretty powerful. Those things you don't forget.
Yeah, and you said right at the start of the show, you know, you do this for you, right? You're not creating. It's a huge benefit to your community, but you started doing this to benefit yourself. So yeah, they do resonate more with you probably than anybody else. And we thank you for sharing them with us. Again, great comment. Rhonda says, your work says what our voices cannot. Thank you is not enough. Your gift is such a blessing.
Oh, thanks, Rhonda. Again, that's a huge deal for me that my peers are so accepting of my artwork. Because like, again, it's just my brain that it's going out there, and it feels a little vulnerable sometimes. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
And Jill, your photos are very realistic in the windows to our souls, the pain that most don't see unless they work in this field. Thank you for that comment. And Jill also said that the technical glitches are due to the filming. That may be true.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go.
That might be true. Right, we've been talking for an hour and 20 minutes, but we could probably talk for another couple of hours. But we're going to look at a couple more photos. But before we go to them, I'm going to post this comment. Where is it? Because Susie Matthews says, I was one of the 1,000 faces in Dan's COVID montage. Means a lot to me to be part of the international effort and family in this way. Susie, that is a great segue. Thank you for posting that, because that gives me a wonderful opportunity to bring up this image.
Yeah, Susie, see if you can see yourself in this one.
Yeah. Which one are you?
Yeah.
Was that 16th from the left and 5 down?
So this picture
this. Yeah.
I did in April. So when the COVID started to happen, and people send me pictures of them at work all the time, which I love. But I noticed everyone was wearing masks, and I noticed that everyone looks the same. No matter where they are in the world, they look the same because they're wearing these masks. So I thought it'd be really cool to do like a really quick portrait or painting of these portraits these selfies that they're sending me, and create this big montage of 1,000 portraits. I don't know why I did 1,000. This took me forever to do. I thought, 1,000 sounds like a good number. But this took me forever.
100.
Yeah, I know, because each picture took about 10 to 15 minutes to do each one. So in this picture, there's 63 different countries. There's 1,310 people. There's one dog in here being held by their paramedic owner. And this is all of us wearing a mask from all around the world. And the idea is that we're so similar. We look the same. We're wearing this common uniform. So we're united emergency services during this, during the COVID times. And it's to show solidarity and support amongst us. And yeah, it's really powerful. And I give this print away for free. You can go to my webpage and there's a download link that you can have this for free, because I want people to remember what emergency services went through. And I'm hoping, 50, 100 years down the road, people will look back at this picture. These are all actual working emergency services people during the COVID times from all around the world. So this picture has been reproduced and it's hanging in emergency services buildings all around the world, which is great. But the purpose of it is to remember this time in our history for emergency workers, and the sacrifices that we've had to go go
Yeah.
You look at this one.
I was hoping Susie would
say where she was.
Yeah, but she did. She just gave us an LOL.
But I have this one in my studio too, and I'll just sit there and stare at it. It's like you look at it, and it's like, where's Waldo? People look at it for, they'll be at it for like 10, 15 minutes just staring at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a ton of work. Again, I don't know why I didn't say 100, because 1,000 was at about 300. I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? But it was well worth it. It's it was very satisfying. And I think, having personal projects like that as a photographer, that's a huge thing. If you can find a purpose and do the photography to use your photography skills as an outlet for, doing some good.
Very good. Yeah. Personal projects is a theme that comes up regularly on this show, just how important they are to anybody in the photography world or any creative, whatever your genre is. Personal projects are a great way of pushing yourself, learning new things, mastering your craft. There's one image, another image I'm finding here that I want to pull up. It's on a kind of similar theme.
Yeah.
The kind of scars of the front line of COVID,
Yeah, this is a photo session I just did a couple of weeks ago. And these are nurses and doctors that this is after a 3-hour photo session after wearing the N95 mask, or the mask that they have to wear for their entire shift. Yeah. So they'll wear that mask for, an 8, 10, 12-hour shift. And this is what their faces look like after 3 hours of wearing that mask. So it's when we're done the photo session and they took their masks off, and I'm like, hey, I'd love to do like a Brady Bunch kind of, 3x3 picture of emergency workers showing the scars on their face after after wearing those masks, which is what we do every day. So again, it's bringing some awareness to what the emergency services community, my community, is doing to protect others, the sacrifices that they're making.
Yeah, it's just incredibly powerful. I've said that about every image, but it's true. You know, everything that you do just resonates so much to those of us who are not in the profession, to obviously your peers who have some incredible comments here. There's the main reason I actually asked you to join this show today, Dan, is because we wanted, we love the fact you host all your work on SmugMug and you're a wonderful SmugMug customer, and we wanted to feature you in a blog article that we're going to write. And as we were talking about it, we thought this needs more than a blog. You know, just a simple blog article isn't enough. There's so much behind these stories and so much that needs to be told and maybe even explained about the imagery that I couldn't think of a better way than to hear it directly from yourself live on the show. And it's been an absolute treat to hear you talk about your work, the why, the how. It's really interesting for me, the how side of it, especially as well. You know, I know the effort that you put into these pieces of art. So it's been an absolute thrill having you on today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Alistair. I was looking forward to this. This is like, I've been using SmugMug ever since I was doing pictures with, of my dog and landscapes. It was a great place for me to, put my images and to look at them anywhere. And yeah, and it's kind of grown into a big part of my process now, which is great. So I was quite excited when you reached out to have me on your show. So thank you.
Great. Yeah, you mentioned your dog. It's had a few cameos today as it's wandered in and out.
Yeah, that's my bulldog. My bulldog Xena. She's pregnant. She's going to deliver her babies in about 2 weeks. So she's like waddling around here. Yeah, her nipples are the size of jelly beans right now. They're huge, but she's a bulldog, and bulldog puppies are the best. So she usually sits right here on my sofa and has her head here, but I think she's too fat to get up there right now. But yeah,
she's wandering around. Oh well, we look forward to hearing about the little feet, the pitter patter of little feet.
Oh yeah,
when they come.
There'll be pictures for sure.
Yeah. For those of you who have been commenting in the chat window, thank you so much for all those great comments. They're still coming in. Lots of huge thank yous from all your community. Rob says thank you for your time. Richard says his picture open up pieces of my soul and allow me to heal and grow to be a more centered provider.
Oh wow! Thanks, Richard.
Incredible words. Just lots and lots of wonderful, wonderful comments. So it just shows you just how important how important your artwork is to everybody. For those of you who've been watching today, thank you so much for joining us live. I would like to ask you a favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell notification. That way you'll be notified whenever we release another episode here on SmugMug Live. Thursday this week, we have another episode. I'll be joined by a really great photographer called Ant Pruitt. That's at 11 a.m. This Thursday, the 3rd of December. Ant will be talking to us about self-motivation, how to critique yourself against yourself. He's a really motivational guy within the photo community, and I'd highly recommend you join me back here on SmugMug Live on Thursday. So hit that little bell and subscription button and you'll be notified about that. So that is the end of the show. We could talk for hours and hours, Dan, and hopefully we get the opportunity to do that again. I would love to have you back on the show and look at some of the work you create between now and then. But for now, stay safe, man. That's all I can say.
Great. Thanks, Alfred. Yeah, you too. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for doing what you do. It's quite clearly really, really important, not just to you. I know that's your main reason behind it, but it's quite clear it is so important for your peers, and you should be very, very proud of what you do.
Oh, I'm very, very lucky. I don't take it for granted, that's for sure.
Okay. Look after yourself. Everybody, thank you for joining us. Wherever you are in the world, have a great day. Look after yourselves, be kind, and we'll see you back here again on SmugMug Live. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.